Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. I am Jack Wynand of the Emperor's Hammer, and I am here with Taygetta and Frenchie6 from the Emperor's Hammer to discuss the new game, Star Wars Squadrons. I'll start with Frenchie. How long have you had the game?
I pre-ordered it, so I had it ready to go at launch. So I guess what, month and a half now?
Yeah, same. And Taygetta?
I also pre-ordered it and got to play it a little bit early as I had quote unquote Australian internet, so I was able to play, which was nice.
Right. Yeah, I feel like a lot of people pre-ordered it. So, what are your favorite craft?
Personally, I've definitely been flying A-wings interceptors. No, the TIE interceptors I've flown.
That's just because he wants to be part of Row Squadron. That's all we fly. I the TIE Interceptor, of course, and but also I was surprised by the Reaper and the U-wing, the two support. Interesting elements to the game, I think, where with support, with resupply of weapons and repairs, augmented shields, all different, but I like it.
Yeah, I mostly play dogfights, and I'd say my preferred craft for the X-wing for the New Republic, and then TIE Interceptor for the Empire. I'm the TIE Reaper. I just find it looks really, really weird, but like you mentioned, both the support ships add a unique aspect to the game that certainly wasn't in the original Star Wars Space Sims. The U-wing, especially, it reminds me of like an old-fashioned Huey Hog helicopter.
Yeah, I think that was what they were going for in the films. But the with the door gunners and you Rogue One. But something I found interesting is that at least not is TIE Interceptor versus the A Wing, X Wing versus TIE Fighter, obviously, TIE Bomber versus Y Wing. But I don't see I see a lot of TIE Interceptors, or TIE Bombers, of course, but not a lot of TIE Fighters versus the X Wing.
I've noticed that as well. Definitely for New Republic, it's usually X-wings and interceptors, and for uh, bombers and the interceptor.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm gonna be upfront. I'm not very good at the game outside of dogfight mode, where I can, well, I'll say that I can handle myself. Um, but the times I've tried to play fleet battles, even with other EH members, I just get absolutely demolished. So I'm not an expert, but my thinking is it's probably because the TIE fighter, I don't think it's that much more durable than the interceptor, and the interceptor is just faster and more maneuverable and has better firepower, so it's like, and the armament is somewhat similar in terms of your left and right pylons, so it's probably a matter of like, you know, I'd sacrifice more in the TIE fighter than in the interceptor. Neither one is shielded, so it's
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, interceptor's just a little better equipped.
I've definitely, I usually into the plasburst cannon on the interceptor, which has done me quite well playing both just regular dogfights and then in the
That's interesting. I've not seen much use of the plasburst cannon.
There's definitely a reason for that. There's a reason why not everyone uses it. It's a very, very high skill cap. In order to use it well, you have to. And even then, the hit register on it sometimes can get a little wonky. You'll hit something and it won't register it as a hit, or you won't hit it and it will register. And the fine balance that you have to find in order to learn how to use it. And then also the power management compared to regular weapons is also a way of how to fly your ship that you're not used to already flying.
So unless you really train how to use it, you could say it's really a hit or miss weapon.
Yes. Yeah, it took me about 3 or 4 days of only using the plasburst to finally get it. It's getting maybe 1 to 2 kills a game, and then now as I've practiced it with probably now back to where I was with the standard weapons. I'm getting 10 to 15 kills on a good game, and got a pro game the other day, which was quite nice.
Nice.
All right. So, here's a question. With you guys both pre-ordered it, like myself, so I would assume you had faith that it was going to be pretty good.
I don't pre-order games as a rule, or I try not to, just because I'm all hype and no substance. But in looking at the release media that they put out, or the pre-release media and the announced media that they drew the cockpit for the TIE fighter, as a kid, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that's something I did 30 years ago when the first game came out, when the X-Wing and TIE Fighter and then XVT came out. And that showed that if the leadership, I think that's cool. And this game, that means that this game is probably going to be something worthwhile versus our EA Battlefront games that came out. Those, I mean, they're fun, but you can see the same. It's more arcadey versus the more simulator feel you got from TIE Fighter, certainly.
Yeah, I definitely feel we wanted Starfighter Assault to be. I pre-ordered the game. I was very excited about it. It's one, I've always liked Star Wars, and two, to have a new flight sim that is a Star Wars themed, essentially, with all the EH guys just going into dogfights and fleet battles. It's been great. I've really enjoyed my time here.
Yeah, I've back in, I think, 2017, I think, is when I first started getting into the original TIE Fighter game. I was thinking, and I was telling my friends, my friends who are also into Star Wars, this game is gold. Why hasn't EA done a remake of this? They need to do it now. And then I heard people talking about this new Star Wars project and how there was supposed to be a teaser dropped. This was before we knew what it was, and then I just saw like the X-Wing being chased by the TIE Interceptor and the pilot managing her power, and I was like, no way. Because finally, Electronic Arts was actually starting to make the game that I imagined them making.
Yeah, because those games I'm old enough that I remember when they first came out. Like I saw X-Wing box video games, if anybody remembers that. Which is way before GameStop, way before everything else. But it was on the shelf. Lucas, next to like the other LucasArts point and click adventures that were around at that time. And I'm like, oh, X-Wing game. And I'm like, I remember distinctly 5 3.5 floppies. And I'm like, ooh, God, they ever really stopped playing it until I went to college. It because the like battles, you could make them as difficult as you wanted, or as easy as you wanted. You could fly them over and over again. I played like from front to back 3 or 4 times, and even got my brother on it. And my brother did not play video games at the time. It's so different from other games, and then that got us into other flight simulators, but nothing really caught us as much as the expansions as they came out, and the CD-ROM version, which had all the final chapter stuff, the last 3 battles.
Right. Yeah, so the guy who I need to look up the name, but if you research LucasArts other games, they actually were responsible for other, really popular flight sims like I think Pacific Battles and Secret Weapons of the Luftwaffe.
Yeah.
And so actually, I have a question. I remember when they still sold games. Well, I mean, they still sell them in boxes, but, I guess I grew up in the era of GameStop. So where you said that you saw these games being sold before GameStop, what kind of, where did you buy X-Wing? Like, I remember seeing stuff like that in my local library, but GameStop was that was the game store that I lived near. So where was
the game store come up? The Babbage's was the you had to go to a mall and go into a store. So I had to ask my grandparents to take me to the mall, go to the mall, walk into the game store, pick up the box that's, and it only has 4 or 5. It only has like 4 or 5 things in it, but it launched with the quick reference card for the keyboard, and then it also had this like book, this like novella about Merrick you play through the game as.
Yeah, Keon Farlander was his name. I think it was called the Farlander Papers. I read through the version
X-Wing,
for TIE
and
Fighter.
then in TIE Fighter it was Merrick Steele. This fun thing. And they're trying to get back to it with steelbook versions of new games, but games nowadays that you basically you buy the box, and the only thing in the box is the download code, and then you got to download it anyway. But You had you had only as many 3.5 floppies as you could fit it on. And yeah, back in the early 90s, video game, like PC video games, were a very niche community. It was not anything like it was today, like it is. Well, we didn't have the internet for starters, really, but it was just huge. It was nowadays it's so different. Multiple big box companies putting stuff out. You had LucasArts, you maybe had Blizzard, Interactive, I think.
Cinemaware.
I think so. Yeah, that was in there.
All right, so here's another question. There are a lot of games that I've played, not all, but definitely some from that era, where I've been, I get stuck, and so I look up a walkthrough, and I'm thinking, how did anybody figure this out without being able to go online and find a walkthrough? So when you were playing those games, and if you got stuck somewhere, what did you where did you go to find out how to beat it? Did you just keep trying, or was there like a repository of hidden knowledge somewhere?
They had you could buy a strategy guide, which if you did and anybody found out, you'd be made fun of mercilessly. So they continued the X-Wing, like the Kean Farlander and Marek Steele stories in the which were like $20 or something like that. And then but I mean that the printed PC Gamer magazine would come out, and every once in a while, or once a month, and if you had a subscription to that, you got sometimes, but really up until dial-up modems and message boards came out, you were figure it out on your own. You're kind of stuck, and you just had to keep brute forcing it or keep trying different things. I mean, with TIE Fighter, obviously, but that kind of kills the fun.
All right, then. So, okay, here's a question for both of you. And I'll have Taygetta answer it first. Since, unfortunately, it's been announced, as far as I know, that there isn't going to be any DLC or new content really added to Star Wars Squadrons. So if you could, if you were in control and you could add one craft for each side in the form of a DLC, what craft would it be?
That's a really good question. I think for Republic side, a lot of people have been asking and wanting the B-Wing, so I probably end up on the Empire side. I really would like to see TIE Defender. That would be really, really nice to see.
I think you've got to, like, if they were to add more craft, I think it would screw up the balance, but they'd have to be very careful with it.
Okay,
but yeah, no, but if they were to add it, maybe a B-Wing, or for the Rebels, they could definitely. I don't know. The way that the B-Wing is set up is so different from the way that Squadrons works, where you have one primary weapon, one second. Like it was a heavy assault fighter, it was supposed to replace the Y-Wing in the canon, but E-wing with like heavier shields and reduced maneuverability thing, or I mean, the Empire has like thousands of TIE variants. So, but I think what they fall, yeah, TIE Advanced would come in, or the TIE Avenger, which was my favorite from the from the TIE Fighter game.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I was also a fan of the TIE Avenger. So for me, um, well, Zach wouldn't be happy with me if I didn't say I'd like to see the TIE Sinister, as it is, Sin Squadrons craft. But that aside, for the Empire, I would like to see a V-Wing, and for the New Republic, a Z-95. And the reason I go with that is because, as it's known that in the very early days of the Empire, they did use the V-Wings, and that's a ship that I just don't think I don't think it ever got enough attention in the movies or Clone Wars. So having it recreated in this sort of, I wouldn't call this DCS level, but with this kind of care and attention to detail in the cockpits, I think that would be really cool. And Z-95, of course,
Yeah,
that's.
actually,
And I
yeah.
also,
Now that I think about it, the E-wing um, from the Rogue Squadron books and comic books.
I forgot about the E-Wing, but it actually was, you know, it was by some accounts not very good with it had malfunctions with its laser cannons and the astromechs. But yeah, that is a
Yeah,
cool ship. I'm just thinking because I think that if they add a craft to one side, they need to add sort of a counterpart to the other side. So I think with the V-Wing, the Z95 is perfect because they're both um end of Clone Wars, early Empire era ships. And I
hmm
think I guess the V-Wing would be like, it wouldn't be quite as powerful as the TIE Fighter and TIE Interceptor, but I think they had shielding. So it would be sort of it would be like a light shielded fighter for the Empire. And then the Rebels, of course, the Z95 has shields, but it doesn't have the same capacity for warheads and firepower that the X-Wing had. So those are my two choices.
Okay.
Anyway, so another question I've got that we should go over, since this is about squadrons, is what advice would you have for other players just in general? Like, not really specific maneuvers, but just for, how to play better, how to increase your chances of winning and getting all those nice medals.
So if I could go first, I definitely say the key to this game, and like it of maneuvers, it's above everything. Good communication with your team. If you do not have good communication with your team, while you might be a good pilot, be shot calling, and then they will just absolutely ruin your day. Being able to say who's on your tail and pinging them, being able to to the next, and to regroup when you have certain people down and certain people up is the biggest part of this game, which I've noticed with power. if we do not have communication, it just goes completely awry, and it does not end well.
Your squad. The most successful we've been is when you have three, all 5 fighters working, like sticking together, blasting the same target, supporting each other, keeping each other keeping the communication going, and really engaging with and really working together as a team. Pick one TIE interceptor versus a Y-wing in a head-on fight is going to die screaming. If the Y-wing has but 2 or 3 fighters against a Y-wing, and the Y-wing doesn't have a chance.
Yeah, I definitely agree. As long as you have 2 or 3 people going for someone, you're usually pilot, which I've come across, where you'll have 4 or 5, your entire team going against one U-wing, and that U-wing, it's frustrating. But at times like that, if you're not able to if you have all 5 of your team on someone, you can't get them, you got to switch focus, because their teammates are going to be on you, shooting you and getting you down.
All right. So it's been about half an hour. Usually Zach and I wrap up the podcasts with him talking about news about the EH. So while I am bringing up some of the reports, is there anything either of you would like to say to the citizens of the Emperor's Hammer?
I mean, you only get better with practice. Fly more. Fly often. Fly with friends. Fly by yourself. Fly in a pickup ship that's different. If you're used to the TIE Interceptor, try the TIE Fighter. And practice. It's out of the game what you put into it.
Definitely. And then if you're looking to fly competitively, of course, there's our Saturday. And then in terms of fleet news, I'd like to congratulate Phoenix on becoming the Commodore of the Hand.
Yes.
Do with us, and I'm really happy for him.
Congratulations, Phoenix. So, as for news, and this is coming from Fleet Admiral Pliff's TIE Corps Commander Report, which was submitted on the 10th. Our roster is up by 10 people, and that means we are going to have a new squadron created soon, which will be commanded by Major Talon Jade, who is currently in Firebird Squadron. Name hasn't been declared yet, but apparently there's one in mind. And if you're interested in joining that squadron, you can contact Pliff. Colonel Mordecai Wolf has put together a prettier TIE Corps pilot manual. So thank you for that, Colonel. And it's also time to pick another ward. So if you're interested in that, and haven't already applied, you can let Pliff know. And of course, there are always plenty of competitions running. Yeah. So I think that's about the gist of it. Is there anything else either of you would like to say before we wrap this up?
All good here.
Yep. Keep flying, guys.
All right. Well, it was great having the both of you. Thank you for coming on the podcast. And we
Yeah,
will
no problem, man.
we will have a second part to this coming out at some point that'll hopefully include my co-host and a couple other people who unfortunately weren't able to make it to this session. And that's it, folks. Stay healthy, stay safe. Goodbye.